We are currently at the Embassy of Israel right here in the capital of Ghana, that is Accra. We will be talking to the Ambassador of Israel to Ghana. He is in the person of Roy Gillard, and we are super excited to be sharing this space with him. Excellency, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for coming over. Next time we will come to the studio.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Welcome.
Israel has been in the news for some time now, for all the wrong reasons. Israel has been in the news for some time now for all the wrong reasons. I don't know whether Israel simply enjoys trouble or cannot stay out of trouble. What is it with Israel and the Middle East, Excellency?
Indeed, we are looking for trouble. Now, seriously, we are engaged in actually one long campaign, a military campaign that started in the very early hours of the 7th of October 23. This is nearly 2 years ago, that has to be said. A campaign launched by a terrorist group known as Hamas, together with another terrorist group known as PIJ, stands for Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Those two terrorist groups crossed the border from Gaza. They actually, that has to be said, they occupied a small piece of Israel. And at the end of the day, when they pulled back to Gaza, they took with them 251 hostages, most of them civilians, and they left 1,200 bodies. 2/3 of the bodies were civilians and 1/3 were soldiers. And this is where all hell broke loose. Israel understood that we turned for too long a blind eye from what was happening in Gaza. We thought that they are only threatening because the Hamas said from the very early beginning that there is no room for a Jewish sovereign state in the Middle East. We did not take them seriously. Now we do. And we understand that there is no room for a terror organization just on the other side of the border, especially when they say day in and day out that this was not the last time they attacked us, and if they'll have an opportunity, they'll come again. On top of this campaign, they got support from all kinds of Iranian proxies all over the Middle East. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and the master of terror in the Middle East, which is Iran. So far, we've managed to, I think, address seriously the challenge of the Hezbollah. Hezbollah were pushed back on the other side of the Litani River, like 15 kilometers from the border. By the way, in this gap between the Litani border and the Litani River and the border, you can find Ghanaian soldiers serving in uniform and doing a great job. The regime in Syria fell down. Syria was another Iranian proxy. The Houthis in Yemen are still on their feet. And the master of terror in the Middle East, Iran, had its own war against Israel for 12 days. And I think by now, I don't want to underestimate them, but I think they were beaten. Everybody understands that in this war, they were the underdog. They became as the underdog at the end of the war. I hope they learned the lesson. Currently, we are still engaged in a very bloody confrontation in Gaza, that has to be said. We still have 50 hostages there, underground, living in places that here in Ghana you would not hold animals in such places, with very little air, very little oxygen. And we still have the Houthis in Yemen. I think strategically, we are much better off than we were on the 7th of October 23, 2 years ago. I hope when this campaign will be over and we'll get all our hostages back, we can start, I would say, heal our injuries, because we do have a lot that has to be said, not only the physical damage, but also emotional damage. Situation in Israel is currently not great, but I know my people, And I'm sure we are going to overcome this ordeal, this challenge, and end up this challenge stronger than when we entered this challenge.
Excellency, you mentioned that you are still waiting for the day when all of this will be over and Israel will begin to heal its wounds. Now, let's talk about, does Israel really want this to be over? Indeed, it appears the situation that happened on October 7 seemed to have opened the floodgates of hell for Israel to carry out its intentions right from the beginning. It's obvious that Israel is not ready to let this go, because you obviously know where Hamas is. If you are truly looking for Hamas, why include the civilians like the Palestinians?
Because we do not know where Hamas is. Currently there are, I would say, around 25,000 activists of Hamas. And we have two challenges. The first challenge is that those activists are actually hiding behind civil population. They are using them, or maybe I should say abusing them, as human shields. That's number one. And number two, they are holding our 50 hostages as, if you wish, insurance policy. Because they know we are not going to get against them as, I would say, aggressive as we could, because they are simply holding our hostages as another human shield. Actually, they have two human shields. They have the 2 million Palestinians, innocent Palestinians, that they are using as human shields. And they have our 50 hostages as another human shield. So it is not that we can do whatever we want. This is why the campaign is taking such a long time. Look, Harriet, we say the key to bring an end to this tragedy, and it is a tragedy, I do not deny it is a tragedy for the Palestinians and it is a tragedy for the Israelis. It's a great tragedy. But we say that the key to solve this problem is with the hand of Hamas. They have to do three things. They have to release our soldiers. They have to lay down their arms. We believe that Gaza needs to be disarmed. And if there is a weapon there, it should be controlled by Arab states, by the Palestinian Authority, not by a terrorist organization. And we believe that the leadership needs to leave Gaza. Just as the PLO, the leadership of the PLO, left Beirut in 1982, long time before you were born, and moved to Tunisia. So things like that happened in the past. And following those three steps, which, by the way, all the Arab League supports it, maybe short of Qatar, maybe short of Turkey. Turkey is not a member of the Arab League, but most, I would say, of the decent, moderate Arab states, Egypt, Jordan, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, they all support this solution. And certainly the Palestinian Authority, Mr. Mahmoud Abbas, they all tell Hamas the future of the Palestinian people is more important than the future of Hamas. Hamas so far do not want to give up. They will be forced to give up.
You said you don't know where Hamas is, but we've also heard the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, in a few video recordings and boldly stating that they surely know where Hamas is and that if they want to fish Hamas out, they can easily do so. We all know that Israel has a lot of power when it comes to technology. Obviously, we believe that there is some way that Israel can actually scoop out Hamas if truly this is all about Hamas.
So why do you
why are you not doing so and leaving the people alone? Have you seen the videos of the children, the women? And I have heard you say that Hamas is using these people, civilians, as a human shield, right? But beyond that, how do you factor keeping them safe? Because you have not gone by all the rules and regulations when it comes to, or the rules of engagements when it comes to war.
So your assumption, Harriet, is not true. When in a small piece of land, which is altogether 60 kilometers by 240 square kilometers, 25,000 people are hiding, mainly activists of Hamas, are mainly hiding in tunnels, while above land, above the ground, you have, and underground, they also hold our 50 hostages. Some of them, by the way, some of them are alive, some of them are dead. But on the land, you have like 2 million people. So your assumption is not 100% correct. The war in Gaza is the most complicated urban war a modern army has ever experienced in the modern time. The United States and the UK had a similar challenge in both Afghanistan and Iraq, but this challenge was not close even to the one we are having in fighting in the most congested area in the world. That's as for the strategic, I would say, angle of the war. You are talking now, I guess, in your question, Harriet, you also alluded to the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and I would like to say a word about it. The pictures that we see on the television are really not pleasant, and I'm the first one to admit that this is a tragedy. However, the challenge is that the UN, who was responsible for the humanitarian aid to Gaza, was taken for a ride by the Hamas. They watched most of the trucks. They managed to get control over the aid. Instead of giving it to the poor people, which it was meant to, they robbed it. They took a big part for their own people, and the rest they sold to the community, to the Palestinians. So what we saw is that, again, they were using or abusing this humanitarian aid in order to rebuild their ability, to rebuild their status in Gaza. We've decided to put an end to it, so we told the UN enough is enough. A private American company by the name GHF, Gaza Humanitarian Fund, was hired by us and by the Americans to do the job. Currently, their mission is not without challenges, and the main challenges are coming from Hamas activists, that they understand that they lost their source of power. They cannot use anymore the aid in order to rebuild their ability. Now the aid is being given free of charge to the people. The challenges are there. I see the pictures as well. I'm just giving you the background. I believe so far the GHF, Gaza Humanitarian Fund, opened 4 big supply centers in Gaza. They are about to build 4 more. But we have very clear indication that Hamas is provocating and trying to interrupt those centers. At the end of the day, and I don't want to give you too long of an answer, Harriet, the misery and the tragedy of the people in Gaza, and I'm talking about the tragedy, is serving the interest of Hamas. The more misery and the more tragedy the innocent Palestinian in Gaza will suffer makes Hamas happier. Hamas is using it as a weapon in the international media to show that the Israelis, to depict Israelis in very dark colors. All the questions that you asked, I don't blame you, God forbid, personally, but this is Hamas manipulating the media.
You think it's propaganda?
I think the seed is there. And there is a problem to supply humanitarian aid to 2 million people under fire. But I think Hamas is trying to make it harder. They don't mind if Palestinian people will be killed or will suffer, because every Palestinian that gets killed is serving their interest. I tell you, very straightforward, and people might find it odd, but Hamas is rebuilding its own, I would say, status and actually survival, because they are about to be defeated soon. They are fighting against us through the international media, and the more dire and tragic the pictures that are coming to Gaza, it's working against our interest, but it's working for their interest, for the Hamas interest.
If you are saying that these findings may be coming from Hamas and that you term all these findings as propaganda and, information to be disregarded, how about the UN's information? Because the UN has actually termed what is happening right now as Israel is committing war crimes.
That's very clear. UN.
What about the United Nations?
So that's very clear. The UN have been asked by the US, by Israel, to evacuate. We know that they didn't do it willingly, but they cooperated with Hamas. Most of the aid that they brought was taken by Hamas activists, and again was, instead of reaching the right location, instead of reaching the poor people of Gaza, most of it was hijacked by Hamas activists, was taken to the activists, and then the leftover was sold to the people in prices that were skyrocketing. So
should we disregard the UN's report as well?
We should disregard the UN report on this, because the UN, UNRWA and others are very bitter now. They have basically lost their status. They lost their, I would say, reason to be in Gaza. We told them, look, we are committed to the basic welfare of the Palestinian people. However, you are not going to do the job anymore. You were taken for a ride by Hamas, and we are not willing to do it anymore. Hamas was abusing the UN system in order to rebuild their status in Gaza, in order to survive in Gaza. And we said, we are committed, we will make sure that there is a new organization, not the UN, that is doing this job. It's called again GHF, Gaza Humanitarian Fund, an American company. There is a lot of money that was invested in this company. Currently, there's no doubt that they are facing challenges, as is being depicted in the media. My point is that most of those challenges are not simple logistical challenges of bringing food to 2 million people in this stretch of land. Most of the challenges are coming from Hamas, that is trying to interrupt the delivery of the US aid, of the GHF aid, because they know that if it will succeed, then that's the end of, or part of the end of Hamas, I would say, presence in Gaza.
Ambassador, if you are saying that we should disregard the reports by the United Nations, which is a very important multilateral institution, the UN is supposed to be policing the world and ensuring that everybody is in check. Now, if you are saying that we should disregard information or reports by the United Nations, as a matter of fact, it appears the United Nations has been disregarded by the entire world because of Israel, because it appears that there is nothing that the UN can do for Israel to actually be seen acting right. Why are you so emboldened?
No, look, we have a long relationship with the UN. Israel was born as an outcome of a resolution of the UN 181 in 1947, 29th of December 1947. We believe, and by the way, there are many now evidence that we are not the only one who thinks so, that the UN is biased against the campaign in Gaza. They turn a blind eye from our interests. There are elements in the UN which are anti-Semite. Currently, I don't want to mention names, but yes, Israel is having an issue with the UN. Basically, our trust of the UN is very limited following the campaign of the last 2 years. We do not trust the activity of the UN in Gaza. I'm not sure that this was done on purpose or not on purpose, but they were taken for a ride by Hamas. until we said enough is enough. You did your job. Now we let somebody else to do a better job. And obviously, the UN is very bitter. UNRWA is extremely bitter. Take UNRWA, for instance, United Nations Relief and Welfare Association, which is there mainly for the Palestinian refugees. We have discovered that hundreds of people that are on the payroll of UNRWA participated in the campaign in the 7th of October, participated in the massacre. They massacred our own people, and then they were back to Gaza and kept on living on the payroll of UNRWA. You said we have a good intelligence, indeed. We found dozens, if not hundreds of people that during the day they used to work for UNRWA as teachers, doing other stuff, and in the night they butcher Jews. We are not willing to take it anymore.
It appears your number one ally, that is the United States of America. Obviously, you hold the U.S. you respect the United States of America than you do when it comes to the United Nations. Why?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Your respect for your number one ally, that is the United States of America. Very good friends. You know, you guys have been together for a very long time. The respect you hold for the United States of America is higher, obviously, as compared to that of the United Nations. Why?
We believe that the UN, look, it's not that always we agree with the UN. With the US, sorry. With the UN, we agree very rarely. But with the US, we agree often, not on all the issues. But the US, since 1948, since when we were established as a free state, as a sovereign state, they were our number one, I would say, strategic partners. At the time, surely Ghana knows as well, the world was divided between the US and the USSR. David Ben-Gurion, who was our Nkrumah, if you wish, he decided that Israel will lean on the West, will be part of the West. Since then, since President Kennedy, going through Nixon and others, relationship was cemented. And I think nowadays the relationship between the US and Israel are second to none. We have no intention to desert those strategic relationships. Those relationships are leaning not only on strategic goals, but also on values. We share the same set of values. We are very proud of those relations. I think the US, the Americans, Jews and non-Jews alike are very proud of those relations. And I think those relations are serving both interests. They are serving the interest of the US and they are serving the interest of Israel. And we are very proud, and it's a completely different set of relationship than the one we have with the UN.
Will this ever come to an end when it comes to Israel and Palestine? Are we ever going to see an end to this? Or what happens? Do we have to kill all the people of Palestine? All the Palestinian people would have to be, killed entirely before this ends. What is the end game?
Short of the last sentence, I thank you for this question, because I believe that in the long run, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict did not start in 48. It started actually, if you're a historian, I think way back in 1920. So it's by now more than 100 years old. I strongly believe that the solution eventually is a political solution. However, the challenge that we are facing is that actually we are facing now two Palestinian coalitions. The first coalition is the coalition of the able but not willing, and the second one is the coalition of the willing but unable. The first one is the Hamas. They are strong. They could have had control of the Palestinian street, so they are able, but they are not willing to live next to the state of Israel. In their charter, they say very clearly that there is no room for a Jewish sovereign entity in the Middle East. This is the first coalition of the able but not willing. The second coalition is the Palestinian Authority. They are willing to live next to Israel, but their ability to control the Palestinian street is very weak. The way that they control the West Bank or Judea and Samaria since they came back in, let's say, in the last 20, 30 years is very poor. Hamas is strong not only in Gaza, where they kicked out the Palestinian Authority. You know, we pulled back from Gaza in 2006. We left it with the Palestinian Authority. Then after a very short time, the activists of Hamas, in a very brutal campaign, just kicked out the Palestinian Authority and drove it back to the West Bank. In the West Bank, also the Palestinian Authority did not project, how should I say it politically, much ability to control their authority. And, you know, had they done it, people could say now they can control a state. But if they failed as an authority, if they could not establish their authority on the refugee camps, which are just 10 kilometers from Ramallah, which is, so to speak, the capital of the Palestinian Authority, how can Israelis expect them, or how can Israelis trust them? You know, I don't want to take more of your time, but Israel is 10 times smaller than the state of Ghana. We lack what you call a strategic depth. That is to say that if we make a strategic mistake, this might be our last mistake. In other words, and here I'm going to sum it up, I believe that in the long run, the only solution which is doable is a political solution. Not a military one. But to reach a political solution, you need one thing which currently is lacking, and this is trust. This is mutual trust. Unless we build the trust, there will not be any solution. Currently, the mutual trust between the people, I think it is in the lowest point since 1948. The lowest point. I think both sides, my government and the Palestinian Authority, not the Hamas, the Palestinian Authority will need, with the support of the international community, I hope also Ghana, to rebuild the trust. So I always say, making peace is like building, let's say, a bridge over the Volta River. You cannot build the bridge unless both sides of the river, the banks, are solid. Because if it's not solid, the bridge will collapse, just as we had with the Oslo agreements in 1993. But for this to happen, we have to put an end to Palestinian terror, mainly the Hamas. The day we will drive them down, I believe we will need to restart our relations with the Palestinian Authority in the wish and hope that in the long run or short run, there will be a political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
So you believe in a two-state solution to this? Is that what you're saying?
When you say political solution, basically it is some kind of a Palestinian entity live next to Israel. This entity obviously will have to be demilitarized. It will be two national states, a Jewish state and a Palestinian state, because currently there are big minorities. Israel has 20% of Arab people. There are many Jewish people that live in the West Bank. It's clear that such a solution will not be able to endanger the security of Israel. That's why I say that when you say a state, obviously you mean a state with an army and with the ability to sign military agreements. This will not be part of it. But short of it, I believe that the solution will be a political one of two national entities living next to each other. The Israel state is there. The future of the Palestinian entity should be determined in the future, but we have no wish to control the life of more than 3 million Palestinians. I think 3.5 million Palestinians, nearly 4 million Palestinians. We have no wish to control their future, to control their life.
Set them free then, Excellency.
As long as they do not endanger our security.
Why can't you set them free? Recognize Palestinians, give them that sovereignty that they've always wanted, to be in control of their own affairs. Why is that so difficult for Israel?
Because since 1936, they have been offered four times in 1939, in 1947, in 2000, and in 2000, I think, and 9 by different Israeli leaders before we established the states and after. They've been offered by the Brits in 1939. They've been offered by the UN in 1947. They've been offered by Prime Minister Barak in 2000, and they've been offered by Prime Minister Olmert in 2009. A partition of the land. They refused 4 times. Nowadays, I think they are in a much worse situation than they were. Again, we have no wish to control their life, but the answer to your question, Harriet, is that you live here in Ghana. I think you cannot sympathize or understand the feeling in Israel that it was taken day in and day out by surprises. One time we are being attacked by Hamas, the other time we are being attacked by Hezbollah, the third time we are being attacked by Iran. We want to live in peace and security. But if we do not have security, peace is meaningless for us. Peace is important only if it comes with security. If peace comes without security for our people, it is meaningless.
We are still talking to the ambassador of Israel to Ghana, His Excellency Roy Gilad, and we've been talking about regional issues to start off with. We've been talking about the Middle East, what is happening in the Middle East, and of course we are still talking about peace and security, and of course ensuring that at the end of the day the Middle East is stable. As you have heard from His Excellency, it is Israel's wish that at the end of the day there will be peace in the Middle East. We'll take a break. When we come back, we are not done. There is so much happening more. Did you watch the news? Israel is at it again in Damascus, Syria. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Iran as well. Please stay tuned. So we are still talking about the Middle East. All the countries in the Middle East are a threat to Israel, except Israel, that is not a threat to itself. And I'm wondering why Israel has been labeled as the aggressor. We are still talking to the Israeli ambassador to Ghana, His Excellency Roy Gilad, and he is taking the time to help us understand matters from their point of view, and of course when it comes to ensuring that there is stability in the Middle East. Now let's talk about, I'm sure you heard me say that Israel has been labeled or tagged as the aggressor. Israel, I mentioned from the beginning, my intro, I mentioned that Israel is always looking for trouble. I am just wondering, have you been monitoring the news? We are talking about Damascus, Syria. This was just yesterday. But before I come to Damascus, which I believe you will walk us through briefly for us to be able to understand what's happening there, let's talk about Iran. Everybody else is a threat except Israel. That is not a threat. Why does it bother Israel so much that Iran would have a nuclear capacity?
Okay, first of all, let me just react quickly about what you said at the beginning. Currently, actually, many of our neighbors, many of the Arab states, they either have peace agreement with Israel or they're willing to accept the presence of Israel as a Jewish sovereign state in the Middle East. We have peace agreements with Egypt, with Jordan, with Morocco, with the UAE, and with Bahrain. We nearly had with Sudan, I believe. Once the war in Sudan is over, we'll have with Sudan. And the rest of the Arab world, I think Saudi Arabia and other states will be willing to live next to Israel, and I believe it's a matter of a short time between now and the day we'll have diplomatic relations with other states, starting with Saudi Arabia. However, there is an axis of evil in the Middle East. This axis is, the head of the axis is Iran, and this axis has, I would say, few arms. If you want, it's like an octopus. One arm, of course, is the Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Another arm is Hezbollah in Lebanon. Another arm is the Shiite militias in Iraq. Another arm used to be in Syria, not there anymore. And another arm is the Houthis in Yemen, which are still there and are still challenging Israel now and then. Let us start with Syria and then we'll move to Iran. I think this is the order that you've asked. The regime of Bashar al-Assad went down, and the new people in Damascus, Ashara, which is known as Jolani, he is actually a veteran of Daesh. His history, his personal bio is deeply rooted in Daesh, in the radical Sunni Islamic agenda. Those people did terrible things before they managed to reoccupy Syria. In a very short time, by the way, the Assad regime collapsed within 2-3 weeks. Once they reached Damascus, they put on themselves suits and ties, and even, I think, the American president, we spoke about it earlier on, said they look handsome. They do look handsome. He looks handsome. The question is not the way he looks, but the way he thinks. We were skeptical at the beginning. By the way, this is one place where maybe we do not agree completely with the Americans. The Americans say it's the right time for you to hug him and everything is okay. We said, maybe we know the Middle East a little bit better than you. We waited, and then we saw already that twice there was a massacre in Syria against minorities. Once, a very short time after Mr. Ashara and his comrades took control over Damascus, they took revenge of the Alawites, which were associated with the former regime of Bashar al-Assad. They massacred hundreds of them. And then they turned against the Druze in the south of Syria, not far from the Israeli border, 150 kilometers, in a place called Jabal Druze, Sweden. And again, they butchered those minorities, the Druze minority. We have Druze in Israel. We have one diplomat here, which is a Druze. They are well integrated in the Israeli society, and they told the government, we cannot turn a blind eye. We cannot sit still here when 150 kilometers from the Israeli-Syrian border, the Syrian army is butchering the Druze. Also, among the Druze in Jabal Druze, the Syrian Druze, they called Israel and said, come to help us. So I think people need to appreciate the fact that as much as we are engaged in Gaza and in Lebanon and against the Houthis, we found the energy to save the Druze. Those are not Jewish people. Those are Muslims who have their own issues in the Muslim world, and nevertheless, those are people. You know, we went through the Holocaust, as surely your viewers know, where 6 million people, Jews, were slaughtered. Why do I mention it? Because there is a very famous picture in Europe in the 40s where a Jew who had a bird, his bird was cut by the Nazis. He was shaved against his will. This was a show of humiliation. We saw now the same pictures in the Jabal Druze. Many of the elders of the Druze, they have also their bird and mustache, and they have been forced by the loyalists of the regime in Damascus to cut it and to shave it as a show of humiliation. I think this in Israel, this makes Israelis very sensitive. And we have decided to save this community. I hope that the Syrians learned a lesson by now and they will keep a distance from this community. Situation in Syria is very complicated. It's not that we close the door completely in front of the new regime. I hope that the new regime eventually will be able to live next to Israel, will be able to understand that 30% of Syrian population are minorities, Alawite, Christian, Druze, and we didn't intervene when they butchered the Alawite in the north. We did intervene when they butchered the Druze in the south. I hope that that's the end of this massacre.
Is that not the beginning of another conflict in Syria? Per your actions right now. As you said, this was done in protection of the Druze community.
Indeed. But I hope this chapter is finished, is over. We have no intention to get involved in confrontation with the new regime in Syria. If indeed they will mind their own business. If minding their own business will involve in the future another massacre of the Druze in South Syria, we will need to defend again the Syrian people, the Druze people. We consider them as our brothers.
Now let's talk about yes, Iran, of course, because when it comes to nuclear capacity, for instance, I was just discussing with my producer that Israel is one state that has not come out publicly to state that yes, we have nuclear weapons to this amount.
So should we want
to know publicly, or because you see the region, you see yourselves as, everybody else, like I mentioned, is a threat to Israel, and that is why you needed to protect yourself. Is that right? Why is it that a country like Iran that actually doesn't have that kind of capacity, the strength, nuclear strength like Israel, is a threat to Israel?
Unlike the other questions you had, and I need to compliment you that were very serious and challenging questions, this is a challenge which I find easy to answer. Because what we do as part of our self-defense is that we look at the enemies, we have plenty of them, and then we check their intent and their ability, their intention and their ability. So we have many enemies that they have an intention to wipe Israel off the map, but they do not have the ability to do so. But when the intention to get rid of Israel meets the ability to do so, where is the camera over there? This is where we become nervous. The revolutionary Shiite radical regime in Iran, since its establishment in February 1979, immediately they said day in and day out, they call us the small Satan, the big Satan was the United States, and they said that Israel has no room to survive or to stay or to live in the Middle East as a sovereign state. Now, when a terrorist organization like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, they say so, okay, it's a terror organization, so we will deal with it. But a member of the UN, a state that calls for the eradication, for the annihilation of another state, this is unheard of. And unfortunately, there were members of the international community that turned a blind eye. We did not turn a blind eye. We watched very closely what's happening in Iran, and when we saw that they are developing two industries which might bring an end to the state of Israel, the nuclear industry and the ballistic missiles, we have decided to intercept it. I think if we should be criticized, is that we might have done it too late. We might needed to do it earlier. But we knew that they are reaching a red line, and we have decided to act before it will be too late. And I think, Israeli people are very opinionated. We have people who support the government, people who are against the government. I think the preemption step we took against Iran enjoys a very wide consensus in Israel.
Excellency, thank you so much for your time. Like I said, I'm sure there will be another opportunity for us to, in the studio. You should come to the studio, indeed. You should come. You should come to the studio. Yes, you should come to the studio. You should come to the studio. Well, thank you so much for your time. As I wrap up, you know, the Middle East nuclear-free zone, the UN has also pushed for a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East. While most countries, including Iran, support this initiative, of course, Israel has consistently opposed it. Again, for your own protection. Is that right?
Let me just say what we always say: Israel will not be the first one to introduce a nuclear weapon to the Middle East. That is to say, this is our position. And let me tell you this: the main reason why we are still there and why we signed peace agreements with 5 Arab states, and I hope with others as well, is only because we were strong. It's only because of our might, military might, economic might, social might, strong international relations. Had we been weak, see what's happening in Lebanon. Lebanon is an example that if you are weak in the Middle East, you cannot survive for long. The only way that we can survive in the Middle East is our deterrence. And I'm happy that realizing this deterrence is called in the Israeli, I would say, language, the Iron Wall. That is to say, Israel has an iron wall around it, but the iron wall is not to be left off forever. The iron wall is only to make our enemies understand that we are there to stay, that we are not going to go anywhere. Once this understanding is going to be part of the, I would say, of DNA of our enemies, then we can get rid of the iron wall. So there is an iron wall, but the iron wall is only to bring us peace. And let me just sum it up by saying that in the Talmud, which is the Israeli the Jewish book of wisdom, it says, he who wants peace should be ready for a war. Think about it. Only if you are ready for a war, and only if you are strong, then the other side will be willing to sign the peace agreement with you.
Interesting. I think we have to wrap up, right? Mm-hmm. Then we have to wrap up with Israel's nuclear non-compliance. That is one point that I would need you to clarify, because that is not just a problem for the United Nations,
I suggest
for the rest of the world.
Sometime for our next meeting, which I'll be very happy to
talk about this.
Even in a very short run,
all right.
In a week or two, let your visitors come down for this dramatic interview. You did a very good job. I hope I did a good job.
You did a great job.
Wonderful stuff. And again, next time,
thank you.
I'll be more than happy to come to the studio.
Excellency, it is always a pleasure to come to your home. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Right questions.
Thank you.
I hope I managed to give the right answers.
You did. You did your job. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right, so this has been another edition of Diplomatic Affairs. My guest has been the Ambassador of Israel to Ghana, His Excellency Roy Gilad, and we've been talking about the Middle East. We've been talking about all the issues when you think about Israel right now, and he has done his best by clearing the air and also having us to understand what really the agenda is when it comes to Israel. So we appreciate his time very much on the show.